Bartenders of Reddit, what are some of the things drunk people have told you while completely hammered? Somewhat related. I used to work in a bar across from a large hospital. I had one guy spend a lot of time in the bar while his wife was in the hospital across the street having a difficult childbirth. He told me my martinis were the best and promised to name his child after me. I of course dismissed this as the drunken ramblings of a madman. Came in a couple weeks later and showed me the birth certificate of his daughter. She had 4 middle names, one of which was a feminized version of mine. To this day I'm kicking myself for not asking who the other 3 were named after. I wonder if any of them were other bartenders. One guy told me his girlfriend wanted them to get married. He was asking me if I thought it was a good idea even though this was the first time I'd ever met him. I told him if he's asking a stranger if they think it's a good idea for him to get married, then it's probably not a good idea. I once had a military guy, probably about 26, who was a regular at the bar I worked at last year. He would come in alone to chat with my co-worker and seemed pretty lonely. This bar was in a smaller town with not a great scene or much military presence. Anyway, one slow night he comes in right before I am about to close and asks me for a whiskey sour. I make it for him, but before I can even give it to him he looks up at me with the saddest face and says, "I have something to confess. I take steroids." I was pretty speechless, so I said, "At least it isn't heroin?" And on the next breath he goes, "I take them up my ass. I've never told anyone that." And slumps down in his chair. I have no idea if he had a bad SZOL encounter or if the weight of his use was just too much to keep private anymore. But I honestly felt bad for the guy. Wonder where he ended up. I have had so many bizarre people walk into the bar I work at. It's a really small place that people enjoy drinking quietly at. Over the years I've had a range of odd topics, from a restaurant owner admitting he never sold fresh food to people unless they knew him, to a person admitting stalking and eventually assaulting a woman, which made him move to a new city. Lots of people end up talking about how they have no one to talk to about their problems, so I guess they find comfort telling a stranger who doesn't have an obligation to care. And my favorite, most FK'd up one, from a girl in her late 20s, early 30s. We had a function hall upstairs. Huge room with its own separate bar. The toilets were on the ground floor, 1 level down. This cute, very drunk girl came to the bar and said that the room was a bit smelly and that we should check the toilets downstairs. The loos didn't smell, but there was a strong miasma of tea in the air. So I had the joyous task of investigating. Turns out, a guest, who we think must have done a lot of coke, had struggled to find the toilet, despite the signs, and had tried to use the small lift instead, but had run out of time and just tea herself. So she had taken off her tights, wrapped up a tea and put them in someone else's handbag. Never found out who did it. So we could only assume she had left straight after that, by taking the stairs past the loos, early. 5'3" waitress here. A man at least 250 pounds and 6 feet 2 told me he'd punch me in the face if I didn't get him a to-go cup for his Long Island iced tea he asked for after I told him it was illegal. Man, so many to choose from here. I'll give a few of my favorites. The time this woman was talking to me and started to complain about her boyfriend's penis. He was sitting next to her, she didn't notice. The time some drunk guy gave me an ID. That was obviously fake. I denied him and he said, "No, it's fake, it's fine." But my favorite happened when I was actually a cocktail waiter when I was 19. This smashed country woman grabbed my shirt and pulled me into to try and whisper, but was basically yelling while pointing at the guy next to her at the bar. She said, "I'm going to FCK this guy." He looked confused and replied, "I don't know you." What made it so funny was the guy's girlfriend was on the other side of him staring daggers at this woman. Extra story: when I was a cocktail I actually got knocked out by a drunk guy who tried to punch another guy but was so drunk he missed wide right and made contact with me. When I came to, he was on the ground by the bouncer and apologizing to me. I felt bad for that guy. Regular, quiet fellow. Usually stayed for 1 or 2 pints and then headed out. It was several weeks before he opened up. He wasn't hammered when he told me. It was really just conversation. Buddy had killed a guy while driving under the influence. He started coming to my bar after he finished his prison sentence. He seemed pretty damn choked up about it. I always wonder how he's doing. I got out of the business lost touch with the regulars. All of the things that they would tell anyone else. If they had anyone else. Got a lot of mentally ill and downtrodden folks sitting in front of me just to have a chat. Took me a while to realize that I'm the only person a lot of them ever talk to in a week. It's true. I have been that guy. One of the triggers for my recovery was a bartender. That used to let me stay and drink with him after closing, telling me that if he never saw me at his work again he would be super happy because it meant I was finally getting my shit together. My shit isn't together yet. But I am not that guy anymore. There's a regular at my job. Jerry. Who is also our locksmith. He's a mess. He likes the daytime bartender best, but he's known to come in around noon and not leave until midnight or later. He's also prone to lying and forgetting what lies he's told us. We all swap Jerry's stories about the ridiculous things he insists are true. Some of my favorites are: there was this guy at the bar a few weeks ago. He was lonely and his face was completely hazy. He stayed until closure time without saying a single word beside what drink he wanted. Usually I don't, but this time I had lot of pity for the man, so I offered him the last round. He was the only client left. When it was time for me to go home, he asked really politely if I could knock him down and that he will give me 50. I started laughing but quick after I realized he was serious, so I tried to ask what's up and why do he wants me to do this. Told him that no money will make me hit an innocent man. He didn't answer, but he thanks me then moved on. I called the police to describe the guy and let them know my fear that he does something stupid to himself. No news from him or police, and so I'm sure everything went good that night, thankfully. And I thought knock him down was some lingo about making him the absolutely stiffest drink you can, thus knocking him down. I had one guy who claimed to have studied psychology while in the army. Started telling me about how much he knew about soldiers' brains. And made it clear he was actively analyzing me and testing the reactions of my co-workers. It was very uncomfortable, as I'm already aware of how screwed up I am and complexes I have. But hoped it wasn't that obvious. He did tip me though. So he's definitely far from the worst customer I've ever had. A surefire way to determine that someone knows absolutely nothing about psychology is when they tell you they are analyzing you right now. It's BS. I have a master's in psych and can't analyze someone's actions or manipulate them into doing something from a casual conversation. Those people are power hungry. And they suck. Hey hiccup, you didn't see me take this bottle of wine that was sitting on the bar and put it in my purse, said while very obviously taking the bottle of wine that was sitting on the bar and putting it in her purse. My least favorite thing was helping hookers get so drunk that they didn't care who their johns were. Nor how ugly or skeezy. Or whatever awful crap they had to endure. It made me sad. But I knew that they probably had kids to feed or some other story that, in their minds, legitimized their occupations and their other life choices. Too many people tell you their sad stories when they are drunk. I had a guy come in and tell me he was being suborned to testify against one of his lifelong friends, who was a crooked politician. One of my regulars was a restaurant manager who was saving up for a US exchange operation. He tipped extremely well. And when you're working behind a bar counter, you overhear every stupid get rich quick scheme. Every terrible pickup line. Everyone is convinced they have the world figured out. Not much is worth less than bar wisdom. But if you sit in one spot long enough, you'll eventually convince yourself you've been everywhere. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Back in the 90s I bartended in a club called the Zone Cafe in Hong Kong. Massive triad hangout. Tons of fights. Closing time was about 4 AM anyway. This bloke wouldn't leave. In the end he was hauled out by the bouncers. All the staff sit down and have a couple of beers. Then we lock up and walk towards the MTR underground station. All along the pavement there's splashes of blood for a good 30 yards. Found the guy's body between two parked cars. He'd been chopped probably 20 odd times. Rumor has it he'd FK'd the girlfriend of a big brother in the 14k triad. Poor FK. My friend was a bartender a while ago. She told us that one time a man said to her, "If I weren't gay, I would be motorboating those hocalifers you have there." And left. Yes. Hocalifers. I used to be a barman at a private function venue. Often had people who did okay, but considered themselves as rich and incredibly wealthy. These middle-aged older men would brag to a 19-year-old about how much more money they earned than me, and that I obviously made some mistakes to get there. Being the slippery bastard that I am, I'd usually converse and listen, ask questions about how they got to be so successful, and quite often they'd give me a good luck in the future tip. Worth it. It also taught me a lot about discussing what you earn. Don't. Got. Old ladies are horny. I do catering. The old ladies go on about me. Or athletes. Or random men they've met. One of the more badass ladies said something like, "Sorry. Am I being inappropriate?" If anyone ever complains, I just tell them I don't remember it because of my age. After their shift, I talked to one of the dishwashers, who seemed like a weird but nice enough to talk to guy. We talked about music. He was sad about Lemmy's death, and I was like, he did what he wanted to do his whole life and died by 70. For me there was nothing to be sad about. I admire the man. Then he went like, "Yeah. Right. I think he's in a better place now. Doesn't have to see all this bullshit." I nodded and he continued. "With the new world order controlling our thoughts, that made me realize that there were a few glasses left to clean and not to talk to him anymore." Edit. This guy was hitting the Bundy, Australian dark rum, pretty hard. He had been chatting up a woman, but she had left earlier. He was boasting about how he was going around to her place at 1:30 am to get some good loving. He got a text message shortly later. He was going around there at 2:30 instead, since her boyfriend would leave for work at 2. Had two really macho looking Marines come into the bar one night. They were doing some hardcore gay bashing. About an hour later, after some serious drinking, we found them in a dark corner of the bowling alley making out and pulling each other's clothes off. Cop, hey, do me in the ass, bro. People think it might be funny or entertaining to be behind a bar chatting with guests. To some extent it is. That said, it's not the late nights that get to you. Not the college student who throws up all over your establishment. Not the drunk arsehole who won't leave the female bartenders alone. It's when you first open the doors and see the old man with shaking hands waiting to come inside. It's the widow who comes in each night looking for company because she lost the love of her life and can't bear to spend another night alone with her thoughts. It's the father who breaks his back working some shitty labor job all day in the sun so he can feed his kids, and putting down half a bottle of whiskey each night is the only thing keeping him from blowing his brains out. I don't drink anymore. I won't. Alcohol is the perfect answer to your problems until it's not. Not a bartender or answering this question. This would just be a good place to wish all you bartenders good luck this weekend for St. Patrick's Day. I know a lot of folks use it as a drinking celebration, so I hope it's an easy yet fruitful weekends for all of y'all. Obligatory not a bartender but standing at the door with security, and this guy stumbles up at like 8 PM. Instead of an ID, he hands the bouncer his credit card. So as the bouncer says he needs his ID, he turns his phone flashlight on and hands him a different credit card. Then, while trying to turn off the flashlight, starts playing music. Then started happy crying when we told him to go get some water and come back later, and gave us all hugs. He stumbled down to the next bar. Flashlight on. Music playing. I told this drunk old hag my name. It's kind of an uncommon name. She laughed, pointed at me, and said, "Everything about you is a mistake." She's a real pro. I was sitting at the bar in a casino with my sister, having a few drinks too many. The bartender and I were talking about me being blind without my glasses and him being mostly deaf. I told him we'd be perfect for each other. Then he goes on to tell me that he actually has glasses that make him look like a nerd and he sports them with suspenders. I literally shouted, "Do you?" My sister had been watching a basketball game, heard me, and got red in the face from laughter. The bartender is thanking me enthusiastically while blushing. I had no intentions of saying that out loud. That was supposed to be in my head. Guys, drunk me is a very open and honest person. I had a drunk man tell me all the perverted and disgusting things he wanted to do to me. Being a small female, I was terrified, but my manager wouldn't let me deny him service. I quit and left him to deal with the pervert. We had this regular called Angela. Lovely old lady. A little on the large side and pulled her dentures out at down shots. But overall couldn't ask for a nicer patron. Anyway, one night Angela got a little bit too wasted without any of us noticing, and she's sitting next to me while I make special shots for this hen party. They're being a little flirtatious, but it's all in good fun. Angela, having watched the entire interaction up to this point, downs her shot and says to the women, "Ladies, this is how you get a man." She turns to me and pulls out her dentures, downs her shot, slots them back in and says, "What has a vice-like grip and FCKS like a tiger?" I'm a bit taken aback, so I just kind of laugh out, or I don't know what. I feel nails embed themselves into my right ass cheek as Angela grabs it through the open bar door, followed closely by her winking at me and saying "GRR." Oh boy. I haven't worked as a bartender in years. When I was an exchange student in Japan, I worked in a bar part-time. Part of my job was to talk with clients, and usually Japanese people don't really like to hold conversations because they believe they have poor English, but do become more loose and talkative once alcohol kicks in. One man came in, and after a couple of drinks, which is like half a bottle for anyone not Asian, he starts prodding me with questions and accusing me of yellow fever after I said I could have a Japanese girlfriend. Relationships are hardcore there. I had a very old guy, who was a daily regular at my old bar, tell me he was going to kill himself. I was the only person at the bar he spoke to much. He was very quiet and a little weird, but he was always friendly to me, so I was friendly back. He told me he had no kids or family and he just couldn't be bothered anymore. After that, I always made time to talk to him and see how he's doing. I told my boss at the time, and he got other staff to keep checking on him even after I left. Thankfully, I hear he's still a regular now and comes in most days months later. There was a guy that casually listed all the abortions he's convinced girls to get. He was saying how when the girl wanted to keep the baby, the trick was to convince them that getting the abortion would continue their happy relationship, when really the girl was a pre-planned pump and dump. He thought he was a prince because he always made sure to pay for the abortion. Lol. Women still love him though. The perks of being good looking and charming. I had a guy come in at 11 AM. This was at an Olive Garden, and order 4 shots of tequila. I was like, "Oh, are you meeting your friends here?" And he was like, "Oh, nope." I was new then, so I just served him the shots and watched him devolve. Sad but common story. Wife took the kids. He stumbled out the door 2 hours later. I prayed he wouldn't get in some crash. Never saw him again. Same guy. You eat a lot of sweets. That must mean you're sweet. You're my kind of girl. Doing chores and being so smart. I'm gonna make you my Hispanic maid. My girlfriend is a dumb bitch.